guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Reading Bear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new revenge content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "You Ruined My High School Life? I Can Do the Same Thing, Sweetheart, No One Will Remember You." Fresh into high school, I fell in love with a girl, Sophia, and our relationship hit it off pretty well in the beginning. One of the first things I heard when getting to know our now mutual friends was, "Wow, Sophia's the first one to get a boyfriend. How exciting." Dumb 15-year-old me did not understand how much a depressing red flag that would be for my crushing future. The first few months were great, honestly, but it took an awful turn towards the end of freshman year. I couldn't stand the way she was treating me, making me feel like the background friend in her life. Since I was becoming so naive and tolerant of her abuse that only continued to grow worse over the coming months, I didn't listen to my friends who had caught on to the issues, even only on the third month. It began with passive things like neglecting my wants, or being super needy and demanding. Then it grew into a level of hate and distaste that I couldn't understand. She didn't want me to see my own friends, and always wanted me to do the heavy lifting in the relationship. She fought a lot with depression and severe levels of narcissism in her character. The girls who are torn with self-hatred and pessimism, yet at the same time love themselves so much they'll betray others. Yeah, she would lash out and scold me for even talking back to her or urging for communication. I started to understand that this feeling of love was just that it got to the point where I justified her actions as, well, better than me being single. Oh boy, how wrong I was. That was the point where I realized I had become a shell of myself, dead and alone from the world. I was no longer any me or amount of self-respect. When you love someone, you would give up the world for them. But a loving look was already too much to ask for, let alone validation. 15 months with this monster and it had broken me. Everyone knew, and mind you, my graduating class is approximately 1,200 students. We're basically the size of a college. She had this habit later in the night when I had already gotten home where she would bombard me with Snapchat messages to get my attention and vent in incredibly unhealthy and toxic ways, blame me for not fixing them, and just not a productive conversation. It got so exhausting and put so much pressure to fix her life. But that was the problem, you can't fix people with depression yourself. That's their life goal to follow. I had felt like a ducking failure for accomplishing so little despite everything I tried. Then it became hell-bent against me. She would get mad at me in outbursts when I would be there to listen, or technically, read, about all her personal problems, and then would disappear. Nothing. Silence. Right after she would ramble about saying goodbye and how much she hated everyone. This happened 4 to 6 times a month, for a long time. There are more days than I'd like to admit where I thought I wouldn't see her the next morning before first hour. We had a huge fight, and she promised to never do it again. Well, we all know how abusers can barely put on an act for so long, and after a while when my traumatized brain was still trying to recover, she did it all over again. By that point I was waking up screaming in the middle of the night from nightmares where I would be in her bedroom, and she would come out of the bathroom covering in water, blood, and cuts. Yeah, self-harm was no stranger. I left Sophia. I awoke a monster. The last straw was when I saw strange DMs on my phone during chemistry homework that weren't from my account, but from her Instagram group chats left over from when she borrowed my phone weeks ago, and I had forgotten about. I had no intention of investigating, but the things I was reading had burst me into a full meltdown. My main friend group, along with Sophia, had been using a chat specifically excluding me to talk bad about how I was awful to her and not good enough for her, and that she deserved all sorts of things more. Tons of lies and garbage talking, like pathetic middle school children. The whole world had shattered for me, and I felt heartbroken below any other point yet. It started with ridiculous accusations of stalking, hacking her social media, bringing guns to school, threatening her outside her mom at night, and it had made so many become hateful and exiling of me. I was disowned by almost any social fabric or relationships I had left, and everything just fell apart. There were detectives that interrupted my English class just to talk with me for half an hour about what Sophia and our best friend Jessica had written against me. They threatened to search my home, and I promised there were no weapons of any sort that I knew about. They let me off the hook, as they could tell she was nuts. When it got back to her that her claims clearly didn't work against me months later, she went around making claims that I had sexual assaulted her. How? Who knows what? Some were suspicious when she already was making different vague stories the next day. But it didn't matter. That was May of sophomore year. It's my graduation in 1 week. I couldn't ever rebuild my reputation to the fullest or prove to idiots that they're idiots, but it's time for some pro-revenge. It'll never be enough to get my justice against the lies she made, but it sure is something. I work in a club that handles a lot of video-related content for the school, students, or other clubs. Film, TV stuff. I was assigned the senior job of editing the music video recap of the senior year. Do you want to take my high school life from me, Sophia? I can do the same to you. I had access to archives of student-submitted photos that were sent to the counselors, and then given to me for video editing. Anything with Sophia, Jessica, or their friends, was wiped clean. It'll be like they never existed. This final video will play during graduation for all to see, and she won't be there. I have another TV friend whose job is to edit a longer slideshow of said photos together for memory's sake. Mine is both photos and some prom clips, and he needed the photos, approximately 600. Of course, man, here they are. I'm still in the process of editing, since graduation is next week. Will anyone notice? We'll see. Thank you for reading. Go rot in hell, Sophia. Next one is titled, Neighbor Didn't Like How I Did My Own Lawn. I moved into my house around the same time as my next door neighbors, new construction neighborhood. We both do our own lawns, they bag their cuttings, I self-mulch, leave the cuttings mulched on the lawn and don't bag. One day I mow the lawn and leave for some errands. I come home to the cuttings I had left on the lawn all raked up and thrown all over my front porch door with a threatening note telling me if this ever happened again and I didn't do my lawn properly from now on, there would be consequences and it would be worse next time. I went over to my neighbor's house, told her I would call the police for threatening me if she ever tried a stunt like this again and that next time she had a problem, maybe try talking with me like an adult, and gave her my phone number. Her husband apologized and said his wife was batshit crazy and he was really sorry. Wife never apologized. I then promptly didn't mow the front lawn for over 6 months, no HOA. I made sure to mow the backyard and make a display of bagging those cuttings and carrying them out front for the neighbor to see, but left the front nice and overgrown. I also ended up having her car towed from in front of her own house. Coincidentally, code enforcement can't force you to mow your lawn, but if you leave a vehicle on the street for over 72 hours without moving it, they'll impound. $600 later she got her car back and I haven't heard a peep from her. Next one is titled, I cut my lawn in random directions because it makes my neighbor crazy. Neighbor is a retired 70-something former preacher or pastor or whatever. He's also a judgmental prick who, despite not living in a neighborhood with an HOA, makes weekly rounds through the neighborhood looking for any minor code violations. Things like flowers that are overhanging onto the sidewalk by an inch or two, etc. He can report to the city to get the owners fined. He mows his lawn twice per day during the summer and has a bed of green that would make Hank Hill cream himself. I take pride in my yard, but it's 70% native plants and wildflowers with a small patch of grass in the front. I don't water the grass because pouring water on the ground seems stupid to me, but it, along with a healthy mix of other stuff, comes in pretty full and there aren't any bare spots anyway. I mow every 5 days, less if we're in a dry spell and it grows slower. Anyway, when I get out there, I cut all the grass, but with a focus toward leaving a path that is as baffling as possible. Sometimes I will attempt a checkerboard and then veer off into spirals. Other times I will approach with an even more abstract eye. The grass doesn't seem to mind and I enjoy the challenge of thinking of new ways to traverse the lawn. Today I saw my neighbor standing out front with his duck-up grandson that got sent to live with him for some reason. He was complaining to him about something, throwing his hands up in the air, clearly very exasperated. Then he gestured toward my lawn and then made a little spiral gesture while contorting his face in disgust. I don't know exactly what he said, but I imagine he was lecturing him about how if he didn't get his life together he'd end up like me, the neighbor with the weird lawn. Small victories, you know? Next one is titled, "Don't Want to Complete Your Loyalty Card Form?" In the trash it goes. This happened years ago when I worked in a bookshop. I was 16, working my first job in customer service at a book, stationery shop in my city. I started in the summer, and it came to August, school book time. Lots of moms and dads were coming in every day with a big list of books their kids need for school that year, plus lots of stationery. Most of them were super nice and normal. But one day, this lady comes in. Classic soccer mom type, too busy and in a hurry to be polite and reasonable. It was coming closer to the start of school, so all the last-minute parents were coming in to pick up their kids' books. It's super busy, and I'm on my own working the section. So this lady is at the top of the queue with all her kids' books. Everything's normal until she spots the loyalty card stand and decides she wants to fill it out and get the points for this purchase. I asked her to step to the side and fill it in, and I will check her out when she's ready because there's 5 other parents waiting to pay for dozens of school books. This woman doesn't move and decides to fill it in on front of the cash register, letting no one else buy their books and holding everyone up. The queue gets longer and longer. She's there for a solid 5 minutes filling in the details, reading the terms and conditions, all that jazz. She doesn't listen to me, is really rude, and the other customers are annoyed at her, but there's nothing we can do. She gets to the personal details section and starts to go off saying how bookshop isn't going to get my address and email. They don't need that from me. That's too personal. Why do they need that? Blah blah, and doesn't complete the form correctly. Without all the details, email specifically, your account can't be verified and activated, nor can you be contacted about your card, your discounts, etc. I chose not to fight her on this, scanned her items, scanned her brand new loyalty card, which she'll never be able to use, and she handed her incomplete details back to me to activate her card. She doesn't thank me and leaves. Immediately, I bin her details card and carry on serving customers. The next customer saw what I did and thought it was pretty funny. It was nice that I could get my little revenge, and another customer approved. I saw her come back a couple times after this, for the newspaper, some extra books for school, using her loyalty card each time. I like to think she's tried to use it for discounts and was told it's inactive, all her former purchases going to waste. You gotta love customer service. Next one is titled, "I Destroyed My Neighbor's Anti-Gay Sign." So I'm gay, fortunately still employed and working remote, been staying at home with family in the suburbs for the past 3 months. The neighbor who lives across the street put up an anti-gay sign conspicuously on the 1st of the month, conspicuously barely a few days after my parents put up their pride flag. My neighbor is an old a-hole who always insulted me when he saw me after he learned I was gay back in high school, 10 years ago. He hasn't changed at all, and when I came back in May I overheard him shout, "Wife's name. The gay is back in town." Most of the neighborhood started ignoring his antics long ago, as he and his wife have burned a few bridges with their bigotry, but every ducking day when working remote I had to look at that ducking sign, quoted the Bible, shows a rainbow flag crossed out. It really hurt so much seeing that, so one night I went out and spray painted over it and wrote, in chalk, on his driveway, "Bigots duck off." I was not caught, but my neighbor is distraught and is asking around. He accused me of doing first, naturally, but I had an alibi that he bought. Nobody is really giving him any info, either. Next one is titled, "Smelly Casanova." Mid-80s, USAF school barracks. The barracks were arranged with a dayroom for each bay of about 10 rooms. Each dayroom had a payphone, but individual rooms did not have phones. Each room usually had 2 students, mostly between 18 and 20 years old. One of the students smelled so bad that more than one person went through channels to get a different roommate. I suspect he was National Guard or Reserves. They had to get in a bit more trouble than active duty to be seriously disciplined because their command structure was their home unit in some other state. Apparently he would bathe on the weekends, because he had at least 2 different women calling the payphone, letting it ring until someone answered, then demanding to speak to him. Smelly Guy's room was at the very end of the hall. He would never answer. Payphone rang just before midnight. I answered and told the woman, "No, I won't go get him. Stop calling this late, we have to be awake at 4 a.m. Went back to bed. Phone rang a couple minutes later. I answered with, "I just told you to stop calling for Smelly. We have to be up at 4 a.m. That wasn't me. It was some woman asking for Smelly. That son of a witch." Next night, phone rang after 11. I answered this first call with, "I just told you to stop calling for Smelly," and the response was essentially identical except a slightly different voice. The call stopped. Last one is titled, "Sent my neighbor a glitter bomb because he was a dickhead to me." I teach kids online, so naturally I have to be on the phone, video chatting with them. I'm working one day and my neighbor decides to start blasting music and I instantly can't hear my student anymore. So I go outside to ask him to turn it down. He has the speaker on his front step just cranked all the way up. Here's how the exchange went. Me. Excuse me, can you turn down your music? I'm on the phone with a student. Your music is a little loud. Him. Surly right off the bat, so? Me. So I'm on the phone. I can't hear my student. Him. So? Me. I'm trying to do my job. I'm working. Him. So? Me. So can you please turn your music down? Him. Yeah, I'm ducking doing it, get back to your house. He was confrontational and angry from the second I started talking and clearly had no intention of turning it down, so I just walked away, and as I'm walking away he was like, "You wanna do it like that? I'll ducking do it like that." I was just so baffled that this guy would be such an a-hole for literally no reason. Immediately. I'm trying to do my goddamn job, and he hurt my feelings, so duck that guy. Mailed him a homemade glitter bomb. I folded it up and glued the edges so he'll have to pull it open and the glitter will explode everywhere. Thanks for listening.